Daniel here. I'm a community broadband champion, and I'm going to be chairing this workshop, looking at what communities can do for themselves. So we're going to really focus on some of the alternative technologies that are out there, and what happens when you start to put local knowledge to work combined with these technologies. There's going to be a bit of an explanation about what wireless can do, also touch on what fibre can do, and we're really honoured today to have two fantastic speakers. We've got Dominic Scarr, who's a wireless expert, worked in the industry for many years, and he's going to be getting down to the nitty-gritty of what these schemes actually cost. Because quite often when you come to these presentations, you hear lots of great things, but you never actually know what that's going to mean for your community. And secondly, we've got Chris Conder, who's going to be doing a case study on Ray in North Lancashire. It's an absolutely amazing community network. First social enterprise in the country to lay fibre optic cable out to the farm. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dominic, who's going to explain about wireless. Thanks very much. So give him a big hand, please.
Good morning, everybody. As Daniel said, my name is Dominic Scarr. I work for a company called 802 Global. Okay, technical difficulties. We don't sell low-friend projectors. Just broadband. 802 Global are a value-added distributor who specialise in working with resellers, system integrators, and network operators to deliver fourth-generation next-gen access. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of UK Broadband. UK Broadband are the UK's largest wireless solutions provider. In addition to that, they're also the single largest commercial holder of national radio spectrum. As I mentioned before, UK Broadband work with strategic partners to deliver next-generation 4G wireless networks to both the public and private sector. I'm hoping we'd have a slide.
Yeah, I think the projector's probably just bear with me.
Turn it off and on again.
As a company, it's not just technical advice and assistance we provide.
Found some.
The company provide advice and technical assistance to network operators, but the company is also prepared to invest heavily in the deployment of next-generation 4G networks. To this aim, we've already committed up to a 9-figure investment for the deployment of a 4G network in London in time for the 2012 Olympics. Now, I realise that network in London might not directly benefit the people in this room, but what I hope that does show is that the company does have a commitment to invest in the deployment of 4G networks regardless of location. It's also worth bearing in mind that this infrastructure we put in for the 4G network in London will be able to benefit networks in rural areas as long as there's connectivity back to the infrastructure. So what I was going to talk about is basically what the wireless technologies available to yourself when putting together a community broadband network. For the purpose of easiness, I've split it into two: fourth generation networks and traditional 5 GHz networks. The aim of the talk today is to highlight what the available technologies are for next generation networks and how organisations can best evaluate the most suitable solution for yourself, both financially and technically. Things to consider when putting together these networks is budget. How much does the equipment cost? How much money do I have to spend? Obviously, it's important that you know the various costs of things so you can attribute to whether it's going to be successful for your network. How do you evaluate this? Basically, you interface with companies like ourselves. You have an initial conversation. What are you trying to achieve? Where are the areas you're trying to cover? What kind of throughputs do you want to achieve? that kind of thing. Once we have this information, we can put together sort of budgetary costings of how much the initial network is going to cost and what it's going to provide. I've also got some slides to assist now. It's also worth bearing in mind that while you're considering what your immediate requirements are, it's also prudent, I suppose, to think about where you see the network economically from here. Money invested in a network that fulfills your requirements as they are nowadays may not do so in 10 years' time. So it is vitally important you spend a good portion of the time to say, okay, well, what do I need the network to do for me now? What do I need the network to do for me in 5 to 10 years? To support these designs, a colleague of mine had actually put together a fictitious broadband proposal based on the city of Gamblesby, which I think you may be aware of. It's, well, village probably, an era approximation. As I said, this was a fictitious case study, but it does take into account real considerations. As most of you are aware, the most fundamental problem in rural areas around Cumbria and other parts of the country is distance away from the main internet point of presence. I'm reliably informed that Gamblesby is 13 kilometres away from Carlisle, which probably is the nearest internet point of presence. And as such, is very poorly served by traditional network operators. The village, if memory serves me, has around 80 households, 1 business, but the surrounding area does have a further 106 farms, residences, that kind of thing. So while the village might be described as being fairly small, the large community in the surrounding area does make a network a more viable proposition. The proposed 4G wireless solution. Basically, a lot of this relies on the community broadband initiative. The most cost-effective and rapid way of doing things is for local people to eulogize the local community, get them on board, and put the proposals together themselves. The aim of the network design for 4G works on the premise that the community broadband initiative will install what is referred to as a monopole in the centre of the village. For argument's sake, it's easiest to imagine it as a large lighting column. On this column, you will install what we call the base station equipment. This is the network architecture that all the businesses, residential areas, community centres will connect to for their internet provision. To get the internet service into the community, you need to look at an alternative route rather than expensive ADSL lease lines. Where we've been successful in the past is we've interfaced with other community groups like Slidermore and Alston, and we've installed what we call a licensed backbone, which is licensed microwave links, usually on communications towers on the hills, which will connect back to the nearest point of presence to provide an internet service. In Slidermore's case, this was in Prudder, and we put in a link from Prudder to Kersley, and then from Kersley to Alston. I think I'm right in saying that the initial internet provision they were getting from Clio was around 5 megabits per second. The microwave network we've installed is currently operating at 100 megabits, but has the capability of increasing that to 400 megabits as the demand requires. The beauty of the 4G technology is probably centred around the CPE and the use of installations. Most people within, for argument's sake, a 2-kilometre radius will be able to connect to the base stations using self-installed home modems. This therefore reduces the amount of time that the provider needs to spend installing the network and fault finding. The users that can't be served by these self-installed modems, usually limits are on distance and line of sight, have the option of outdoor CPEs mounted discreetly on the properties. I do have a range of photographs and slides if anybody is curious as to exact dimensions. I can give you some kind of a scope. It's also worth bearing in mind as well that these can be camouflaged. Now I know in rural areas you probably have more maybe antiquated buildings, more concerned about the natural view of things. These units can be painted, so as long as you use non-lead paint, because obviously lead will impinge the signal, then they can be camouflaged as well. Again, this work can be covered by the community group. Again, some of the community groups we have interfaced with have used the option to provide employment for local workers that will now be served as the installation arms and the installation companies. That's happening both at Alston with Cybermore and in Stanford with Weardale Net. It takes a reason